Now, presenting first is the speaker, Dr. Heike Deggim. I'd like to just share a little bit about her background. Now, she's been with the International Maritime Organization, IMO, since 1993. She's now the Director of Maritime Safety Division and the Secretary of the Maritime Safety Committee, IMO's senior technical body for ship safety as well as security-related matters. Now, her presentation in just a while coming up is on the IMO and the human element. Where do we go from here? So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please warmly put your hands together and welcome Dr. Deggim on stage. Over to you.
Senior Minister of State, Mr. Chee Hong Tat, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to address you today on the occasion of the Singapore Safety at Sea Week 2022. The subject of my presentation today is the human element in shipping. Oh, it's already there. Arguably one of the most important facets of our work at IMO. This has never been more obvious than during the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Shipping is truly essential to ensure the functioning of the global supply chains, and the pandemic made the world aware of our dependence on shipping and, of course, on seafarers. The next slide is not coming up. Oh, there it is. Okay. The wide-ranging scope and importance of the human element makes it a shared responsibility not only of IMO as the regulatory body, but also for member states as the implementers of policies, companies as providers of the necessary resources, safety policies and safety culture, and seafarers as the individuals who physically operate ships. To give you an idea of what the human element related work includes, I have listed on that slide here some of the most important issues, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. Virtually all areas of the work of IMO have human element related aspects. But let's start at the beginning. The human element has always been an integral part of the work of IMO. The Maritime Safety Committee had for many, many years an item on the human element on its agenda. However, it always played kind of second fiddle to the more technical work of the committee. This was the reason why MSC 92 in 2013, when restructuring the subcommittees of IMO, agreed to change the name of the Subcommittee on Standards, Training and Watchkeeping, the STW subcommittee, to Human Element Training and Watchkeeping Subcommittee, HTW. Now, that was not merely a change of name. The change of name also included a change of the terms of reference of the subcommittee, putting more emphasis on the human element. The 28th IMO Assembly in the same year then adopted the strategic plan for 2014 to 2019 and included in it a section on shifting emphasis onto people. Following that, in August 2020, the IMO Council considered a proposal by Spain highlighting that the strategic plan of the organization should have a dedicated strategic direction on the human element, taking into account that strategic directions described areas of special interest for a given period, and particularly in the context of the global crisis stemming from the pandemic and the protection of seafarers, allowing the organization to meet its vision and its mission. This was further considered by the Council at its 125th session, and in between also discussed at HTW 7 and MSC 103, and it was agreed to include a new strategic direction in the strategic plan of the organization. That strategic direction is called Address the Human Element, And this change was finally adopted at the 32nd Assembly by Resolution 1149. This move reflects the key role of the human element in the safety of life on board ships, playing a prominent role in the prevention of maritime casualties. The human element's ever-increasing scope and significance in the safe, secure, and environmentally sound operation of ships has been exacerbated by the pandemic, and the human element has been the focus of joint work with our UN sister organizations, in particular ILO, ICAO, and WHO. Shortcomings in human performance at all levels in the chain of responsibility are a major cause of incidents. IMO continues in its effort to address this problem, and we are striving for full compliance with IMO instruments. And in doing this, their effectiveness will come under scrutiny with each incident that we have resulting from human error. On the other hand, advances in technology and training provisions will offer new opportunities, which IMO can harness in order to enhance the contribution of the human element to safety, security, and environmental protection. In this connection, HTW 8 agreed on the need for a holistic approach across the whole of the organization and requested the MSC at its 105th session, which took place in April of this year, to invite all relevant IMO bodies to assess their respective involvement in the human element within their remit. This represents a very important step towards reviewing and addressing the human element in all aspects within the organization in a more structured manner. Now, this is, of course, a very complicated task, and it will take some time to accomplish. We are currently developing guidelines for the other IMO bodies on how to go about this. They will report back to the committee, and we hope that we can then draw conclusions and develop relevant provisions. In all our efforts to address the human element, the cooperation with the International Labour Organization is, of course, of particular significance. I'm sure all of you know that ILO is the depository for the 2006 Maritime Labour Convention, the International Convention regulating working and living conditions on board ships. The preservation of seafarers' rights in all circumstances, including in times of crisis, of course, is a fundamental element to uphold the shipping sector as an attractive place of work. Cases of abandonment have increased recently, with 74 new abandonment cases reported until now in the IMO-ILO joint database on abandonment of seafarers. This was only during the first half of 2022, so we can assume that this year we are heading towards surpassing 2021's record of 95 cases, which is, of course, not a trend that is to be welcomed in any way. On the contrary, we need to work on this very hard. The joint ILO-IMO tripartite working group, which has been re-established by IMO and ILO to identify and address seafarers' issues and the human element, will meet over the next 2 years in several sessions, and they will address in particular guidelines on how to deal with seafarer abandonment cases and also proposals on the fair treatment of seafarers detained on suspicion of having committed maritime crimes, and also any other topics jointly mandated by the two organizations. One of these other topics is bullying and harassment in the maritime sector, including sexual assault and harassment, and the joint group has also been tasked to consider the matter with a view to providing recommendations for future steps, also in relation to any necessary amendments to the STCW Convention as appropriate. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic, and to some degree, Also, the more recent conflict in Ukraine have highlighted the need for quick and decisive humanitarian action to support seafarers as global key workers. Cooperation and collaboration of all stakeholders are essential. IMO's Seafarer Crisis Action Team, better known under its acronym SCAT, was established at the beginning of the pandemic and has since then worked collaboratively with other UN agencies, the shipping industry, and seafarers organizations to address the fallout from the pandemic. It's now abundantly clear that seafarers and other marine personnel must be designated as key workers so that they receive the necessary support when it's needed, such as for travel, repatriation, many other issues, and especially in times of crisis. If we do not assure the rights and well-being of seafarers, we will not be able to retain the existing seafarers in their profession, and we will certainly not be able to attract new talent to the industry. IMO continues to work tirelessly to deal with the challenges by means of a multi-pronged approach, including policy development, working together with other UN agencies and industry partnerships. 2 UN-led groups have been formed with a diverse membership to address the issues experienced. One is a UN interagency task force examining implementation and practical application of the Maritime Labour Convention, especially during the pandemic, including its impact on seafarers' fundamental rights and on the shipping industry. The other group is a joint action group with shipping and transport industry and social partners, formed to identify key challenges faced by transport workers during the pandemic, focusing on cross-border workers in shipping, civil aviation, and road transport sectors, especially taking into account the experience we had during the pandemic, which did not only concern seafarers, but every other industry sector that has to cross borders. The reports of the 2 groups are expected towards the end of this year and will of course be considered by relevant IMO bodies, hopefully leading to constructive solutions for the global problems experienced. Now, any marine venture depends on people, and if they function inadequately, it is impossible for that venture to be successful. The ISM Code and its safety management systems establish a framework for the management of those marine ventures by providing a structure for the development of safe procedures and systems. It is the organizational failure, even by well-qualified crews and apparently well-run companies, that is often at the heart of accidents and/or subsequent pollution incidents. Addressing the issue of organizational or management failure is one of the key targets of the ISM Code. It is important not only for the credibility of the shipping industry, but also in order to establish a safety culture that safe and efficient operations are ensured. The proposed ISM Code study, initiated by the Secretary General and currently developed by the Secretariat, is focused on the assessment of the effectiveness and effective implementation of the ISM Code and its related instruments and provisions. The conclusions and results will serve as a baseline for any regulatory exercise that the organization may be undertaken in the context of operations, management, and also safe manning, with a view to responding to the needs for a safe, secure, environmentally sound, efficient, and sustainable shipping industry. The active engagement of all member states, the shipping industry, and international organizations to provide data and other support and promote recommendations resulting from the research will be fundamental to ensure the success of the study. And I hope that Singapore, as one of the most active IMO members, will take a very active interest in this important project. And I'm encouraged in this by the remarks of the Senior Minister of State emphasizing earlier the need for a safety culture in shipping. This is my last slide now. We recognize the transitions that are occurring in the maritime industry at the current time. This includes decarbonization, automation, digitalization, and the resulting need to ensure that these are just and equitable transitions that leave no one behind, especially no IMO member states, and that seafarers from all countries have the right skills and training to continue to contribute to global trade. The forthcoming review of the STCW Convention and Code will provide an opportunity to consider the requirements as shipping transitions to become more sustainable, with the introduction of new fuels, for instance, to meet emission targets, and the increasing use of new technologies. Maritime professionals must be trained to the high level of skills needed for this transition, and this will require concerted and collaborative efforts. The maritime professional of the future will need new and different skills than in the past. We must rise to the challenge and create a workforce that will operate the green ships of the future safely and securely. Matters such as facilitating mandatory seagoing service requirements for certification of seafarers, assurance of quality onboard training, and the introduction of flexibility for revalidation of seafarers' certificates to cope with the challenges faced during exceptional circumstances are also expected to become key elements of this review. The proper manning of ships and its significant contribution to preventing fatigue and safeguarding seafarers' mental health is another important issue to consider. On the other hand, attractive working conditions, contracts, and wages, as well as appropriate seafarers' recreational facilities, amenities, and services, including social connectivity, adapted to meet the special needs of seafarers who must live and work on board ships for significant periods of time, constitute a fundamental element of a modern work environment. Ladies and gentlemen, maritime transport is the most economical and environmentally sustainable mode of transportation of large volumes of cargo. As the industry examines ways to continue to do this even more effectively and sustainably, we must ensure that we keep the human element, the critical component in this important supply chain, at the heart of all we do. At this pivotal time in history, the maritime industry is contributing to the efforts of the entire world to significantly reduce our environmental impact by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, in a bid to increase efficiency and sustainability, the industry has embraced digitalization and automation. All these efforts mean that shipping is undergoing complex and substantial change. This change has considerable repercussions for the maritime workforce, and we need to ensure that it is ahead of developments. It is imperative that education, training, and skills evolve with the industry. Thank you.